The Ghosts of the Mississippi, written in flowing, emotional English, crafted for a golden bachelor. The River of Return. The Mississippi River. It carries more than water. It carries memory. Memories of battles and freedom, of laughter, of loss, and of the souls who never reached home. There are stories that shape a nation, and stories the nation forgets. This is one the river refused to forget. The year was 1865. The Civil War had ended. The Union had triumphed. The guns were silent, but the heart of America was still bleeding. Along the banks of the Mississippi, thousands of Union soldiers waited for a way home. They were survivors, men who had endured the horrors of Andersonville and Cahaba, the deadliest prison camps of the Confederacy. They had survived starvation, disease, and despair. Now they stood beneath the southern sun, thin as shadows, waiting for the river to take them north. Among them, Private Elias Turner of Ohio, 23 years old. He'd lost friends, lost hope, but never the thought of his mother's face waiting back home. In his pocket, he carried a small carving from prison, a scrap of wood that read, "From Mother." Elias didn't know it yet, but the greatest danger of his life was still ahead. The floating palace. Waiting at the docks of Vicksburg was the Sultana. She was a beauty, a gleaming white steamboat with brass railings and crystal lamps. They called her the Queen of the Mississippi. But like the nation itself, beneath her shine, she was cracked. The Sultana had a damaged boiler. Her engineers warned the captain that it could burst at any moment. But Captain J. Cass Mason had a different concern: money. The U.S. Army was paying captains $5 per soldier. The more men on board, the greater the profit. So, Mason patched the boiler with thin iron, took the government's contract, and began loading the ship. The Sultana was built for 376 passengers. That night, more than 2,100 climbed aboard. The journey home. As the Sultana steamed north, the men cheered. They sang songs of victory and homecoming. For the first time in years, they felt alive. The river sparkled under the setting sun, and from the decks came laughter, music, and the sound of freedom. Private Elias Turner wrote in his letter that night, "Mother, I am coming home. The Mississippi is beautiful tonight. It shines like heaven." They didn't know that heaven was closer than they thought. The night the river turned to fire. Just after midnight, April 27, 1865, a roar shattered the stillness. The Sultana's boilers exploded, 3 at once, splitting the ship apart like glass under thunder. The sky erupted in flame. Iron, fire, and splinters rained into the water. The river itself seemed to burn. Men were thrown into the air, their bodies glowing red against the night. Decks collapsed, timbers snapped, screams filled the darkness. It was over in seconds. The Sultana, the proud queen of the Mississippi, had become a floating torch. The blast was heard in Memphis, 7 miles away. More than 1,700 men would never be heard from again. The River of Fire. The Mississippi that night was a vision of hell. Flaming wreckage floated past like ghostly lanterns. Men clung to the debris, their uniforms in tatters, their voices fading into the smoke. Elias Turner surfaced, gasping for air. Beside him, his friend, Jacob Hall. Jacob's legs were gone, torn away in the blast. He begged Elias to leave him, but Elias refused. He wrapped his arms around him and whispered through the freezing wind, "You're going home, Jacob. You're going home." Hours passed. The current was strong, the water colder with every breath. And as dawn approached, Jacob slipped away. The river took him. Elias stayed alive because he refused not to. Rescue at dawn. When the sun rose over Memphis, the air was filled with ash. Local men and women rushed to the banks. Farmers, fishermen, freed slaves. Without orders, without hesitation, they rowed toward the smoke. They pulled half-dead soldiers from the water, one by one, their hands blistered, their eyes burning from heat and tears. One rescuer, a black man named Isaiah Freeman, saved more than 20 lives that morning. When asked why he risked his life, he said, "The river takes what it wants, but sometimes it gives one back." Out of more than 2,000 souls, only about 400 survived. The rest became part of the Mississippi. The forgotten tragedy. News of the disaster reached Washington, but no one listened. America's heart was already broken. Lincoln had been assassinated. Booth was on the run. The nation was exhausted by grief. The story of the Sultana vanished beneath the headlines. No memorials, no funerals, just a few lines in a paper. Steamer Sultana explodes. Many lives lost. The deadliest maritime disaster in U.S. history was buried by history itself. The ghosts of the river. But the river remembered. Years later, fishermen spoke of strange lights drifting against the current. Old captains claimed to hear voices in the fog, men singing the old songs of war and freedom. In 1915, during a drought, the remains of the Sultana rose from the mud near Marion, Arkansas. Her boilers still fused together, her hull half swallowed by time. Locals said when the wind blew across her wreck, you could hear faint echoes, like soldiers calling for home. The man who remembered. Elias Turner lived. He married, he raised children, he rarely spoke of that night. But near the end of his life, he told his daughter a secret. Don't forget the men who never came home. They fought for freedom, but they died for greed. And then he was gone, leaving behind nothing but a faded letter and a carving that said, "For Mother." The river never forgets. Today, near the quiet town of Marion, Arkansas, a small memorial stands where the Sultana burned. Few people visit, few even know. But the Mississippi remembers. If you walk along her banks at night, you might hear laughter in the mist, or a faint whistle echoing through the fog. Some say it's just the wind, but those who know the river, they say it's the ghosts of the Mississippi, still singing their way home. The river never forgets. Based on the true story of the 1865 Sultana disaster, the deadliest maritime tragedy in U.S. history.